Welcome back to Change It Up Radio, here with Paula Shaw and my guest today, who's got me on the edge of my seat with such incredible information that he's giving us about the coronavirus. Scientist Bob Hertz, who is the director of Psy-Tek Laboratories, a research facility here in Encinitas. So, Bob, we were just talking about how we can avoid spreading the virus, because we can have virus alive in us. Even after we test negative, the virus can still live for 40 days in our nasal cavities, correct?
And I would say up to, and I would also say it is rare. It's not an everyday thing, but it happens enough to know that you could still be doing it. So to save lives, what's an extra 40 days of wearing a mask so you're not affecting the people you care about and people in public? Absolutely. Some people are jogging around wearing masks, okay? And there's a lot of misperceptions about oxygen, okay, carbon dioxide. And there are some studies that just came out, although there are lots of other ones that show that the oxygen is reduced. It's not quite as bad as has been shown by some other videos that have popped up online.
Good to know. Now, this is our last segment, and I don't want us to miss out on the opportunity to talk about the testing, because you have really enlightened us about how important testing is, because as I recall, you said 40% of people walking around out there are asymptomatic and don't know they have it, but can spread it. So tell us a little bit about the testing that Psy-Tek offers.
Okay, first of all, I just wanted to say I'm a computer scientist. I work with medical science and work on techniques to help them get back to work now, as well as work on different methods of getting people tested. So the typical test is the nasal swab. The problem with the nasal swab is that the way the FDA requires it being done now, it needs to be administered by a health professional. So even if you get one of the kits at home, you have to have a health professional administer it. And then the worst part of it is that you have to ship it to a lab. Now, most of the testing facilities, most of the equipment, Abbott and the other ones, are wonderful. They pick it up fast. They're very accurate. But by the time that vial gets to the lab, having been compromised by an anticoagulant and a carrier fluid, there's been a lot of proof that the testing is compromised. Not all bad, but it is compromised by that travel. And they've gotten a lot better. Why? Because they are getting them quickly, they're testing them fast, and they're turning them around much quicker. So I would say if you want to know if you're infected, you need a nasal swab or a blood draw, not an antibody test. But an antibody test is very important because it can tell you how your body has responded to having the COVID-19 in you. So we at the lab here are frustrated that people cannot test themselves at home. They can't do that, and there's a lot of good reasons for it. Protecting people from themselves, not doing the test properly. So we opened up a research project here a couple of months ago, and we have a institutional review board sanctioning it and approving it. And what we're doing is we're creating these kits so that we are taking the typical box of these antibody kits that come 20 to a box, and we're breaking them up and producing kits that look like this. So this kit here has everything in it for a person to prick themselves and take the blood out and put it in a cassette, and then put the reagent buffer on top of it, wait 10 minutes, and see if you have either one of the two antibodies. IgM indicates recent exposure, but if you're negative and you're recently exposed, you're not out of the woods, because it could take more days for you to show that antibody kicking over. So the incubation period is a little different for everyone. So I would say if you know you're exposed and get an antibody test and it's negative, and you've only been there 2 or 3 days, come back in another 2 or 3 days, stay sheltered in, and make sure you really don't have it. Even if you're asymptomatic, it will show up because your body will react and produce the antibodies. So,
Or could you do a combination of both tests to find out more quickly if you're infected?
if I was getting tested, or anyone in my family is getting tested, I would make sure they get both. They need to know if they're infected right then and there.
Right.
And then they need to know how long they've been infected. Just the antibody test is very important. And so they're more readily available and less expensive to do the rapid antibody testing. A lot of bad press on them early on, but I can tell you that my exposure to this entire process was caused because one of my researchers reacted to an antibody test I sent to them. And they said, thank God we can finally do our work. And that was about a month into a distribution of several kits from Korea and Germany and China. And, most of them are great, but less expensive ones, of course, and the ones that are rapidly produced can be compromised. So, the best thing to do is to go into a LabCorp or Quest or CVS is doing them at drive-throughs and get the real deal from there. But if you want to test yourself at home, there's no way to do that unless you want to also have a doctor or nurse come to the home and then ship it off again to a lab. If you want to know right now, these tests are not anymore, in my opinion, and we've been working on this for a long time, less problematic for people to do than a glucose test. You take one of these little, in the kit, take one of these little lances. This one's an automatic lance. Pop off the top, stick it on your finger, and you get a drop of blood. And then you take that blood. I'll open up a cassette here. And you put the blood into the little bottom hole here. Then you put the reagent on top of it. And in a few minutes, you will see it rise. And you'll first see whether or not the actual test is functioning properly with the control line lighting up. But then in a few minutes, if you see either one of the other lines light up, it indicates you have those antibodies present. That's all it can tell you. Antibodies are present. On the other tests, which we haven't really had availability to use a rapid test, most of them go to the lab. So recently, we know several manufacturers have come up with a rapid swab test where you can actually find out the same results by taking the swab and putting it in your nose and then putting it into a very similar situation. Here we have one. This is a kit that we're waiting for approval from our institutional review board now before we add it to our research. And the research is available to the public. The public has to sign informed consents, so we protect their rights as subjects, as in any other clinical trials. But in this kit, we have a nasal swab, and we have a little tube. And the tube that we use, I don't know if you can see this, there's a tube in there. That tube has some liquid in it, and you would take the nasal swab and stick it in the tube, squish it around a little bit, wait for about 5 minutes for it to get to room temperature, and then you take that swab that's been in the solution, and you take the solution that was produced from you swishing the swab around, and you put it into another type of cassette. This cassette is designed to say whether or not you are infected or not. It's just yes or no. So this also is a 10 to 15 minute exposure time. So this would be a wonderful thing for businesses and companies to give to their employees, or say a senior resident before he checks in. Are you infected? Let's check it in the parking lot before you infect everybody here.
So these two tests, if people would like to get a hold of them, they need to become part of this study, right?
Yes.
And that is as simple as signing a release form. Is that what you said?
Well, if you go to the website, Psy-Tek, psy-tek.com, and you click on COVID, get tested, then you will go through the process that we are required, because this is strictly research. We do not advertise, come get tested. We advertise, come join our research. The purpose of the research is very straightforward. We believe that it should be available at homes for people to just do it at home by themselves and find out. So we have opened up this research for the ease of use and reliability of rapid home tests. And the data that we've been collecting will be used to help a kit manufacturer do what we did, to prepare them as for single use and provide enough documentation and safety precautions so that the FDA will deem them safe enough for people to use by themselves at home. So if you've done a pregnancy test, you know, that's simple. If you have diabetes or type 2 diabetes, you know, you're testing your blood all the time. That test is very similar. And there's no reason in our belief that that should be kept from the public. And right now it is. It is a medical device. It needs a prescription. It needs a health professional to administer it.
I see. Well, I love what you're doing, because from what you've taught us today, only being able to test at least, I would say, once a week at home will make us all safe ultimately. You know, we'll end this virus in our country, because enough of the other steps that you described are really not being taken that thoroughly. So once again, for people to do this, they need to sign a release. And then what is the cost of actually getting a test that they can use at home and become part of this study?
Well, it's been going down and down and down because there are many more players, and it's becoming more available and less expensive. So we started at 125 and now we're down to 45. The reason we charge is because we have to actually re-engineer the kit.
Sure.
We don't just sell it, and there's costs involved. And we do have cases where philanthropists have helped us do testing at facility, and we're open to that as well. So we are a nonprofit, and we are set up to do this kind of work. And our mission here right now is to help like companies who are doing medical exams get back to work safely. And that's kind of why we did your medical thermal imaging exam that you did. And when you came here, we tested you to make sure you were not infected. And then you got the use of our incredible new robotic camera.
Yes, I did. No one was anywhere near me. It was
and
great.
That allows that particular test to be safer than it was 6 months ago.
Yes.
And now we're working on the other ones. We're about to announce that we have the brain mapping available. Okay, and we also have another test we use, one of our Pioneer Frontier devices that measures the biofield. And then we also have other testing here that we get a complete picture of the energy level as well as the pathology going on in the systems. The website address, and I'll repeat it again, is www.psytek.com.
Bob, I am so delighted to have had you on this show today. I think you have enlightened us about some really important things. And I thank you for being with us. All of the information as far as how to reach Psy-Tek or online, if you didn't get a chance to write it down, it will be in our show notes. I urge every one of you, if you enjoyed and if you learned from what you heard today, please share this show. We need to get our country back online, and you heard the things that Bob shared with us we need to do. So thank you, Bob. Thank you to all of you. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week on Change It Up Radio. Bye-bye.